Welcome back to the discussion of spatial computing. Today we are going to meet Mr. Len Kne, and he is spearheading a very interesting project at University of Minnesota campus called U Spatial, which is a shared resource for many departments and colleges. And it's a part of a trend, at least nationwide in US and maybe even in other countries, to create such resources. Okay. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Len Kne. Hi, Len.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So first question I wanted to ask you was, I understand your undergraduate focus was in recreational studies.
Mm-hmm.
From there, how did you come to spatial computing or GIS?
Yeah, kind of a long road. Most of my career has been in information technologies, and when I finished my undergrad degree, I started working for a major park district, doing research, studying how people use the parks, doing needs assessments of that type of thing. And this was back in the mid-'80s. I had the first personal computer for the park district, and so in order to do my job, I started learning more and more about information technology, which got me into that. But one of the things we used to do was map how people used recreation areas.
Oh, cool.
And we did this with paper and pencil, and if we wanted to analyze it, we had to page through all the papers to get the information out of it. And that stuck with me for 20 years, and 2005 I returned and got a master's in geographic information science, partially so I could start working with some of this paper, non-digital work. So I see GIS from the technology side of it.
Wonderful. So what kind of things are you working on nowadays?
Okay, you'd mentioned U Spatial. That's my main focus. Our tagline is support for spatial research. We provide services throughout the University of Minnesota for researchers, for grad students, and for students who are working on projects. So this involves things like a help desk, if they have any questions. We do a lot of trainings. And then we do almost a consulting type business that help researchers out when they need help with spatial.
Wonderful. So do they need help with, for example, different data sets such as census or different map layers?
Yes, yeah. A lot of the hardest thing I think with getting into GIS, and we see it with people who are not working with it regularly, is finding the data to begin with, and then once they find the data, they've got to get it into a format that they can get into the software, get into the program to work with it. And that's hard when you first work with it.
Wonderful. Yeah, certainly there are hundreds and hundreds of map layers mapping everything. And I just learned looks like parks are being mapped as well.
Yes.
And then these data sources, I guess, it's not as trivial as just taking two data sets and putting them together. I mean, what else do users have to know about? Are the coordinate systems different across data sets, or what are the challenges in pulling different data sets together?
Certainly, yeah. Projections, are huge. How do you, flatten out the world, right? It's round, so we're going to have different projections. As wonderful as the Web Mercator's projection is for the web map, it's not always so great for doing spatial analysis. Other things they need to look for is the metadata. You need to look at how was the original data collected, and what was its purpose? Did they have, what's the accuracy of it? Will it work for your needs versus what the original collection was done?
Neat. And what kind of software do they come to seek help on? I mean, isn't Google Map enough?
For a lot of things it is. We do a lot of work with Google Maps. At the University of Minnesota, we have a site license with the Esri products, and that makes it very attractive for our researchers to use. It's very inexpensive. So we've got people using the desktop version, and more using ArcGIS Online, the web version, so they don't have to learn this fairly large software package to do the work.
They're wonderful. And in terms of training, what kind of things? Is it mostly for learning ESRI ARC software, or do they also learn other things like census data sets and so on?
Yeah, our focus is primarily on the technologies. There are groups on campus that'll work with more of the data sets. So the Minnesota Population Center will focus on census information. So yeah, we're trying to teach a little bit about spatial and a little bit about the software so they can get going.
Great. And then where do your users come from? Are they primarily from geography department, or do they come from elsewhere in the university?
Very few are from geography these
okay.
days. That's one of the neat things we're seeing with spatial information. It's from public health, it's from vet medicine, it's from the business school.
Wow.
We're seeing more and more from the humanities as far as religious studies, and even music are starting to use spatial information.
Interesting. What would religious study do with the maps?
Yeah, so I've got one project that somebody was looking at how congregations interacted in the 1850s to 1900s in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the churches, the locations stay the same, but the congregations and the people change regularly. So they're looking at spatially how do they interact.
They're interesting. Wow. So if spatial computing and data set services are so much needed by so many disciplines in University of Minnesota, is that the case in other universities, and are they providing similar services?
It certainly is. It's growing across a lot of the large universities are starting to provide GIS, remote sensing, spatial services across the campus, because it's very transdisciplinary by nature. Some have maybe more defined centers than U-Spatial. We're a little more of an umbrella. Places like Harvard or Santa Barbara have well-established centers. But most universities are doing that, and we're also seeing if the smaller universities are often providing services through the library.
Oh, very neat. So hearing Harvard, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's coming a full circle, because roughly in mid-1960s, there was the Harvard Graphics Lab where Jack Dangermond and many founders of ESRI used to work. And Harvard felt it was not academic enough and asked them to leave. And that became a $1 billion company.
Yeah.
And now they are back. They want GIS services on campus now.
They do, yeah.
Very, very interesting. Great. So what do you see the future of these services? I mean, do you see this growing on many other campuses? Do you see these, where is the spatial services on campus going? Yeah,
for Minnesota, again, it's expanding to, I think, all disciplines on campus. We're certainly growing in some of the big data needs and those types of projects, but it's mostly other disciplines picking it up and working collaboratively between multiple departments.
Okay, wonderful. So, I have an interesting analogy. When I was in undergraduate school or earlier, many campuses had a computer center, which was a shared resource. People who wanted to use big computing would come there for help. And then it slowly grew into a graduate program, and then departments, and now it's a very, very vibrant discipline with large industry.
Yeah.
Do you see similar analogy with GIS service centers? Do you see this precursor to becoming, bigger things on campus?
I do. I think it will. I think that there's the idea of this spatial university where you integrate GIS, remote sensing, throughout much of the university, and it will continue to grow. And in a way, we make use of a lot of other resources, such as the Supercomputing Center and other resources to do that.
They're wonderful. Great. So, so thinking about the audience, in this class we have almost 20,000, participants, and many are from, many different countries. And in some countries, the universities may not have started a spatial computing services group. So let's say if they were interested in thinking about creating similar services in their universities or collection of universities, what advice would you give them, and how can they start?
Yeah, the key is in the people. You've got to get people talking and working together. It took probably a decade to get the idea of U-Spatial going on the university here. It's working together, thinking about making connections with disciplines that you wouldn't normally work with. So geography is easy, but religious studies, history, you don't think about those connections so much. And look for the tools that are out there. There's a wide range of open source tools that work very, very well.
They are wonderful. So that's a wonderful place to close, because Harvard, the service, GIS Service Center is headed by a historian, right? And some people say there is no history without geography, and maybe there is no geography without history, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So we thank Mr. Len Kne, who heads the Spatial Computing Services on University of Minnesota campus, which is a valuable resource. And he shared how this is happening at many other university campuses. because the GIS data sets, tools and services are becoming very, very useful in many disciplines. So in the next interview, we'll meet a few other community members and get a sense of what's happening in the community in general. Thank you for your attention. Look forward to seeing you soon.